Venus and star blessings, everybody. Just a very quick update, which I believe will be useful. So, this is about the Venus star point coming up in Gemini on the 4th of June, which is tomorrow. So, be sure to do a little ceremony, a little offering, a little blessing for the goddess of love to receive her blessings. This is a very powerful time to do it when the alignment actually occurs, which is tomorrow. Now, here's what I want to show you. Basically, what's going to happen is that when a Venus star point on the wheel is activated, it means that energy, that vibration is activated collectively on numerous levels, and of course, for each of us personally. As I explained in two previous videos, this Gemini Venus star point will be an evening star. So it's Venus transitioning from her Leo morning star phase, which was activated in August last year. And 9 months later, which is basically tomorrow, she transitions out of her morning star phase into her evening star phase. She does this every 9 months without fail. This is her pattern. So, as I've also mentioned, people born before 1964, this Gemini Venus star point would have been in Cancer, because it was in 1964 that the Gemini Venus star point became active on the wheel. Just so that you understand, these Venus star points transition every 100 years or so. Okay, so they take a very long time. They're very slow moving points relative to the Sun Venus conjunctions. We generally look at the smaller cycles, such as the 8-year cycle particularly, but in terms of the actual star on the wheel changing signs, that only happens about every 100 years, sometimes 110 years. It just depends. So the Gemini Venus star point started in 1964. It is now at 14 degrees of Gemini, which is where it will be when it forms its conjunction tomorrow. Now, the conjunction occurs tomorrow, and one other thing that I forgot to mention in the previous recordings, which is why I've come back today, is to be very mindful that transiting Mercury, which is just about to switch into Gemini, and I'm speaking tropical zodiac here, every planet that transits over the Venus star point basically meets the energy, receives that energy, activates it, and uses that energy, right? It does something with it. So it's quite an auspicious Gemini Venus star point. As I mentioned, I think it was yesterday in the new moon video, this Gemini energy at the moment is receiving a lot of blessings by the two benefics, that is Venus and Jupiter, as you can see them both here. Let me just actually grab an assistant tool. So there's Mercury. By later tonight, it'll actually be into Gemini, okay? And Jupiter is already in Gemini. The Venus star point is occurring in Gemini. So in when is it? Let me just see. It's on the 10th of June. So 6 days after the Venus star point is activated, which is 4th of June. That is tomorrow for me anyway, or Southern Hemisphere people. Mercury passes over the Venus star point on the 10th of June. Now, that's a short passage because Mercury is a very fast-moving planet, but that could be a very important day or date and time relative to this Venus star point and what it's bringing up for you, what it's highlighting, what it's reflecting, what it's going to bless you with, what you choose to learn or study at this time. This really is about learning and studying, okay, because it is the archetype of Gemini. So I guess the other matters that could connect to this as well is matters of siblings, because Gemini is the archetype of siblings, as is Mercury. So there could be dealings or matters and themes that are highlighted with siblings at this time as well. And certainly when Mercury transits over the Venus star point on the 10th of June. It could also be contracts, contractual negotiations, agreements, things of that nature, because Mercury corresponds to the written and spoken word, and it also corresponds to, contracts. Okay, so we may be thinking of making a contract with somebody at that time. A contract can be, a range of different things. It can be signing a lease for a property. It can be having certain negotiations with lawyers. It can be with your psychologist. It can be with your astrologer. It can be signing up for astrology classes with me. It can be, so many different things. It's basically a document that is some type of agreement, okay, that corresponds to Mercury. So because Mercury is passing over the Venus star point on the 10th of June, because on the 10th of June, Mercury will be at about 14 degrees of Gemini. That's why it will pass over the Gemini Venus star point. So that can be an important date. And I would also perhaps suggest that just remember that Mercury, Hermes, who is, such an extraordinary divinity, actually, on so many levels, where you can look at Mercury from an evolutionary, traditional, Hellenistic, medieval, it connects to commerce and trade, all those sorts of things. Also, from Babylonian astrology, we've got, Mercury as in Hermes and Apollo, which is the morning star and the evening star. Then you really consider the mythology of Mercury, and the fact that when he was a child, literally he was just a child, he stole some of Apollo's cattle, and what he did was he traced his steps backwards to cover his steps, right, so that he doesn't get caught. He was so clever. That's Mercury going retrograde, by the way. So in other words, what I'm getting at is that Mercury corresponds to thieves and liars. and Mercury in Gemini is its own domicile position. So there's enormous mastery of intelligence with Mercury in Gemini. And that can be, that can be manifested in so many different ways. That can be, just brilliance in intelligence and brilliance in communication and the written or spoken word, and writing books and teaching and speaking and podcasts and negotiations, agreements, contracts, all of that. But do not forget that Mercury corresponds to thieves and liars. So if you are in a position where you're making some sort of contractual agreement on the 10th of June, just make sure that you've got all the facts correct, with what you are negotiating with. Classic example could be buying a car. We all know that salesmen are liars. They're ruled by Mercury. Mercury rules transportation. And it's not it's not an attack against guys or girls, for that matter, who sell cars. It's just part of the game. It's just how it works. It's always very, very worthwhile, really, just remembering the story of these divinities, their mythology, their roots, their history, what they represented in the different historical times of history and so forth, whether you want to look at Babylonian astrology or whether you're looking at more Hellenistic Greek astrology, mythology, but Mercury is Mercury, and Mercury is a master with logos, with word and speech, but he is very, very cunning. He is the god of thievery, if that's even a word, thieving, and lying. So I guess that's just a side note to consider, because that can be a really important thing to note if you are in a position where you are making some sort of contractual agreement. So that's one thing I wanted to point out. And in addition to that, Jupiter, because it's in Gemini, and of course it moves much slower than Mercury. Jupiter is going to spend 12 months in the sign of Gemini. And Jupiter gets to the Venus star point degree, which is 14 degrees, early August of this year. So I think what I'll do is I'll come back as we get closer to that time, so that it's more fresh in people's minds, and talk about it at that point in time. But I wanted to raise it today just to bring it to your attention if you haven't considered it, because I do believe that Jupiter passing over the Venus star point is going to be quite a profound, auspicious, and beneficial time, right? So relative to the first few days of August, where I need to look at the exact dates of that. I know that it happens around the 3rd of August, but how long it's around there and so forth, I will give those details to you later. But of course, you are always welcome to, explore that yourself. But that's going to be an important month, okay, relative to this Venus star point in Gemini. The other thing that I wanted to mention was that some of you may have the Gemini Venus star point as the head of your pentagram. So it makes this cycle quite significant for you because it activates the head of your pentagram. That's number one. Number two, I guess the thing that also needs to be considered is, well, this is an evening star. Are you an evening star birth, or are you a morning star birth relative to your Venus star point? If you are an evening star, this cycle, has a very specific affinity with the natural inherent makeup and energy of this Venus star point in yourself, in your chart, right? If you're not an evening star, it doesn't mean that this evening star phase is not going to be important for you. Of course it is. It's going to be important for all of us, but it's just important to be aware, is this your phase or not? If you don't know how to work all that out, you can come to me. That's what I'm here for. That's what I do. And I can help you figure out your pentagram, where everything is, how it connects to your chart, and so on and so forth. The other final thing that I want to leave you with, which I have shown this in the past, but I'll just bring it up very quickly again because I am a generous person. It's just my nature. So there is a program called Planet Dance, okay? And here it is here. This program is free, by the way. So whoever's created this is an extremely generous person, because they've created a whole program and they've made it, available to anyone and everyone. Astrology software programs are not cheap. They're in the high hundreds, depending on which one you're going to invest in. This program is for free, and there's a lot to this program. It's really complex. Whoever's put this together is like amazing. I really have so much appreciation and respect for them. Anyway, what I'm showing you here is actually a chart just for today. So it's no one's birth chart, but this is one of the beautiful things about this particular program. It actually creates the pentagram for you in the chart. The program itself puts it all together for you. And if you look over here to the right-hand side, it shows you A, B, C, D, E, and next to the alphabetical letters, it'll have a title. Next to A is what's called the receiving foot. Then you've got the receiving hand. In this case, the head of the pentagram is actually Leo. That's the symbol for Leo, by the way. That's just an older, more traditional symbol. So some people might not be aware of that symbol. But look at the date. It's 13th of August, 2023. 13th of August, the sun was in Leo. Okay, so that's what that is showing us, essentially. And because the star point, the new Venus star point, occurs tomorrow, that is the reason why the program is picked up that the head of the pentagram is Leo, because the transition has not occurred. It occurs tomorrow. When the transition occurs tomorrow, then the head of the pentagram will become Gemini. That's what happens. They switch around. So the Gemini Venus star point that occurs tomorrow, first of all, where is it on your pentagram? Is it the head of your pentagram? Is it one of the feet, one of the arms? Is it a receiving foot? Is it a giving foot, receiving arm, giving arm? These are important factors to know. And also at the same time, when you draw up the pentagram chart for when the alignment happens tomorrow, the Venus star point becomes the Gemini Venus star point tomorrow becomes the head of the pentagram. So that's the collective transit, right? But in your own birth chart, this Gemini Venus star point will be, for example, let me just bring up this chart. It's just a bit easier to see. So pretend this is your birth chart, right? Just for argument's sake. And so the Venus star point will be happening over here in the 9th house, for instance, right? At 14 degrees of Gemini. So when you were born, depending on when you were born, if you were born pre-64, this same Gemini star point was in Cancer. But if you're born post-64, it switched into Gemini. So when it switched into Gemini in 1964, it started at 29 degrees of Gemini, okay? Not at 0 degrees of Gemini. Important to understand that. The Venus star points move backwards in the zodiac. So when they transition out of a sign, so when it transitioned out of Cancer, it went straight into the 29th degree of Gemini, okay? And now from 1964 to the present moment, it's moved from 29 degrees of Gemini and it's moved right across to 14 degrees of Gemini. Okay, that's how far it's moved in all those years. So where is this Gemini star point in your chart now? It would have been somewhere, pretend this is your birth chart. It was, let's see, it would have been in your 10th house when you were born, let's say, for example, depending on when you were born exactly. But let's just say when you were born, it was in your 10th house, okay? And because it's moving backwards, obviously moving in this direction. So then it's moved out of your 10th house into your 9th house through the course of your life. And all the star points can do this depending on where they are when you were born. You might have a star point that just stays in the same house for your whole life. It depends where the star point was when you were born, what degree it was in, which house it was in, where it was in the house, and so forth. There's a lot of things to understand about this and consider. So once again, if you don't know how to work this out, because it's not necessarily easy, it is complex. There are many, many layers to this. But the most beautiful thing about it is once you superimpose the pentagram onto your birth chart and you understand where those Venus star points are, and then you understand what they mean in the signs and in the houses, and then you take the next step and you start linking them to the other planets in your chart, it starts to light things up in your birth chart in a very different way that nothing else does except this Venus star point pentagram pattern. And this is only one level, because when you go into Babylonian astrology, there's a whole other level of teachings associated to it, which correspond to Venus's heliacal phases. And that's a whole other subject matter, which is extremely complex, but extremely valuable. And, one simple thing about that would be if I'm using Ruman's program, for instance, which is this program here, well, let's just bring up this chart just to keep confidentiality and have an example. So this is John Kennedy. So this is his Babylonian chart, okay? This is the position of the planets in their true position relative to the constellations, okay? And the sidereal or Babylonian zodiac. Now, if we go to pentagram of Venus, for instance, what is he? He's an evening star. So this panel here comes up, and this panel shows us where Venus first appeared over an 8-year sequence, an 8-year cycle, which is Venus's cycle, 8 years. These are the appearance dates where she first appeared in the evening sky relative to his date of birth. And these points, these dates, these passages, depending on where they are, could be very, very important passages in the person's life. Now, let me show you what that looks like. Where are you? Venus. Sorry, I've just lost. Oh, brain, there you go. Okay. All right, so there it is there. So you get this, just trying to move this to the left. You get this window opening up. It gives you the dates. It gives you the tropical degree and sign of the appearance, and then it gives you the Babylonian degree and sign, which in a lot of cases is different, right? As you can see there, tropical 8 degrees Gemini, Babylonian 14 degrees Taurus. And then what happens is, what this does is it draws this pentagram in, which is very different to this pentagram here. Completely different story. Completely different. So, and they're numbered here again. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And so where these numbers appear and the corresponding dates and the position of these numbers is what starts to define what's going on, why it might be important, why this year might be important, for instance, for this individual. You know, if the pentagram, if you get one of the points, you know, appearing on the ascendant or the descendant or the MC or the IC, well, they're the most important points. You know, those points are huge. But where it lands in other points in the chart are also very significant for different reasons. And you might get one of the windows, one of those dates, one of those corresponding Venus star points appearing, being conjunct a particular star. That's going to be important. You know, you can see there's Regulus right there, actually. Now, let me just see something just out of curiosity. So the only thing about this program, because there's so much detail in this, it's very hard to find things. Okay. So 23 Cancer, 29 Cancer, and 24 Leo. So in the Ptolemaic zodiac, that beam, Rumen calls them beams. And I like that he calls them beams, actually, because they literally are beams of light, because that's what Venus is. She's the cosmic heartbeat, this beam of radiating pure light that brings in harmony, beauty, love, balance, you know, lots of different things. Anyway, he calls them beams. So this beam here could be very important because it's pretty close to Regulus. This beam here is important because there's a lot going on here. Anyway, I'm not going to sit here and do a delineation on this. I just wanted to show you, just to demonstrate to you, the two different systems in a very simple way and just how different things are. But for the purposes of what I wanted to share today, 10th of June, mark that date. I would say 9, 10, 11th of June, that window there. Mercury passes over the 14th degree of Gemini, which is the Gemini Venus star point degree. Later in August, Jupiter will pass over that Venus star point degree. That's going to be huge, and that's going to be really beneficial. But I will come back and talk about that in more specific detail. You can download Planet Dance for free. As I said, it enables you to create this pentagram, which helps you because it figures out for you out of the 5 Venus star points, where's the head, where's the arm, where's the leg, which one's which, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's just an extra detail for you. So I'm going to leave it there, and I'm going to get back to my work. Once again, if you're interested in studying with me, I have 2 courses available at the moment. I have a couple of workshops available on the side. And also if you want a Venus star point reading, or any other reading for that matter. And actually, you know, the other thing about Babylonian astrology relative to that pentagram that I showed you and so forth, and I mentioned heliacal phases, it's really crucial to know whether Venus was visible for you or invisible at birth. Those are 2 different Venuses. They operate in very, very different ways in the person's life, and different for men and different for women as well. And incredibly valuable to have that information, to know it. It'll possibly, if anything, at the very least, just help you understand so much more about your Venusian life, all things Venus in your life, whether Venus was, pardon me, visible or invisible. So keep that in mind and reach out if you want to know more. Venus and star blessings, and see you soon.